The night was cold. Wind howled between the buildings of the alien city. The streets were made of smooth, glowing stone. But tonight, even they felt dead. She sat near a trash bin. Her back was against a wall. Her clothes were torn and covered in dust. Her skin, once silver and smooth, was now bruised and dry. Her long white hair clung to her face, wet from the rain. She did not move. Some walked past her. They looked down and whispered cruel things. Ugly creature. Throw her somewhere? Far. She's useless. Why is she even still alive? She heard every word, but she did not cry, not anymore. Her name was Zilari, or it had been, once. She belonged to a high-born alien race called the Valari, beautiful, glowing people who lived in shining towers. But not her. She was born different. Her body didn't shine. Her eyes were too wide. Her voice was too soft. And for that, they called her cursed. At age 12, she was sent to the servant quarters. At 16, she was beaten for speaking out of turn, and at 20 they finally said, "You are nothing, you are not one of us." They threw her onto the streets. No clothes, no credits, no name. She had not eaten for 2 days. Her hands were shaking, her stomach twisted in pain. Her breath came in small gasps as rain poured harder. And then, something strange happened. She felt a shadow fall over her, a presence, but it didn't feel cold, it felt warm. A voice followed. "Are you okay?" Zilari opened her eyes slowly. It was a human. She had only seen humans on the news screens, hairy, rough, always angry or loud. But this one was quiet. His hair was messy, dark, and he wore a dirty mechanic's jacket. His boots were wet from the rain, and oil stains marked his gloves. But his face looked kind. She said nothing. He crouched beside her and gently held out a wrapped food bar. "It's not much, but it'll help." She stared at it. She didn't move. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. "My name's Jacob. I live nearby. You look like you need help." Zilari didn't take the food. She didn't trust kindness. It always led to pain later. Jacob looked around, then removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. "You're freezing." The warmth of the cloth shocked her. She flinched but didn't pull away. Then her lips moved for the first time in days. "Why?" she whispered. Jacob tilted his head. "Because you look like someone who's been hurt." Too much. Those words made her chest ache. She looked down. She couldn't cry. Her tears had dried long ago. "Can you stand?" Jacob asked. She tried. Her legs trembled. She nearly fell. Jacob quickly caught her, but not roughly. Gently, like someone holding a fragile flower. "Easy. Let's go slow." With his help, she stood. The city still watched them, cold eyes, judgmental stares, but Jacob didn't care. He led her carefully through the narrow streets, down into the old workers' zone. Machines buzzed, lights flickered. It wasn't a fancy place, but it was safe. He brought her to a small room. It had an old bed, a heating unit, and shelves full of tools. It smelled like grease and metal, but to her it smelled like safety. He gave her a blanket, a dry shirt, and warm soup. She sat on the edge of the bed, unsure if it was a dream. Jacob didn't ask questions. He didn't stare at her bruises. He just worked on a broken robot in the corner, humming softly. When she finally ate, he smiled. "That's good. You need strength." She looked at him again. Carefully. Slowly. This human had no reason to help her. She had nothing to offer. No beauty. No power. No glow. And yet, he stayed. As she closed her eyes that night under the warm blanket, one thought filled her heart. Why does this human see worth in me as when my own people never did? Outside, the rain kept falling, but inside the small room, a light had been lit, and for the first time in years, Zilari slept in peace. Solari woke up slowly. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. A soft blanket covered her. The air was warm. No voices called her names. No feet kicked her. She was not in the cold streets anymore. Then she remembered. The human. She sat up fast. Her body ached, but the pain felt lighter now. She saw him across the room, standing near a half-fixed engine. Sparks flew as he worked, but he turned around when he heard her move. "You're awake," he said gently, smiling. Solari didn't know what to say. She looked down at her hands, still bruised but clean. She was wearing a loose shirt, probably his. Her feet rested on a small rug. It felt soft. Too soft for someone like her. I should leave," she whispered. Jacob frowned and walked over. "Why?" She shook her head. "I don't belong here." "This isn't about belonging," Jacob said. "It's about surviving, and you needed help." "But I'm not worth it," she said, her voice barely a breath. "I'm broken, ugly, useless." Jacob sat on a crate beside her. "That's not true, and whoever made you believe that was wrong." She looked into his eyes. There was no anger, no pity, just quiet truth. "I don't even have a name anymore," she whispered. Jacob leaned back thoughtful. Then he said, "Well, I'll call you what I see." She braced herself. Was he going to mock her? "You're brave," he said. "So, I'll call you Bryn. It means strong-hearted in Old Earth tongue." Bryn, the word felt warm in her chest. She looked away, hiding her surprise. Jacob stood up and walked to the shelf. He pulled out a clean container and poured more soup into a bowl. "You should eat again, your body's still weak." She took the bowl with shaky hands. She sipped the soup slowly. It was simple, vegetable paste and broth, but it tasted like life. "Do you live alone?" she asked after a while. He nodded. "Yeah, just me and the machines. I fix junk for trade." "No family?" "Not anymore. Lost them in the Terran Wars." A long silence passed between them. Two broken souls, one from Earth, one from the stars. Then he said something she never expected. "You can stay here. As long as you want." She nearly dropped the bowl. What?" Jacob spoke calmly. "You need time to heal. You're not ready for the world outside." "But I have nothing to give you," she said. "You don't have to give anything," he said. "Just be safe." No one had ever offered her safety before, not without expecting something, not without trying to own her. She stared at the floor, her thoughts spinning. "Are you afraid of me?" she asked. He chuckled. "You? No. You're the first alien I've met who didn't try to rob me or bite me." That made her smile. Just a little. Her lips hadn't moved that way in years. "You smiled," Jacob said. "That's rare, huh?" She nodded. That night she helped him clean up the workshop. She couldn't lift much, but she wiped down the tools and sorted wires. It was strange, working side by side with a human. But for the first time, she felt useful. As the night grew darker, he showed her how to open the heater panel and adjust the warmth. He gave her a toothbrush and clean socks. Before going to bed, he pointed to the door. "It doesn't lock. You can leave any time. I won't stop you." She stared at him. Why would anyone give such freedom to someone like her? He climbed into a fold-out bed on the other side of the room. She lay down on the cot again, still wrapped in the same soft blanket. She whispered before sleep took her. "Why do you care?" Jacob didn't open his eyes. He just said softly, "Because no one else did." And that night, in the silence of the little workshop, something deep inside her cracked open. It wasn't pain. It was hope. The third night in the workshop was quiet. Outside, the city lights flickered like dying stars. Wind howled through the metal alleys. But inside the small room, there was warmth, the soft sound of a heater and the quiet hum of a repair bot. Jacob sat on the floor, fixing a cracked engine part. Bryn, once Zilleri, sat on the bed, knees pulled to her chest. She watched him work. The way his hands moved with care, not violence. For hours, she had said nothing. But something had been building inside her. Memories, nightmares, shame. And now, it wanted to come out. I was born wrong. Jacob looked up but didn't interrupt. My people are called Valari. We're supposed to glow. Our skin, our eyes, even our voices hum with light. She paused. But I was born dim. No, glow, like a shadow among suns. Jacob nodded, letting her continue. My mother begged the elders to let me live. But the council said I was a blemish. At 6, I was banned from temples. At 10, I was hidden during festivals. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling. They let me clean floors, feed animals, carry waste. One day, a noble boy grabbed my hair and dragged me through the street. People laughed, said he was brave for touching something cursed. Jacob's jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. At 15, I tried to run away. They found me, shaved my head, and locked me in the dark for 5 days. Her voice cracked. I begged to die. Jacob slowly set his tool down. Bryn blinked hard, staring at her fingers. And then, they threw me out. Said I'd bring bad luck if I stayed. I wandered the lower levels of the city, ate moldy bread, slept under transport docks. Every day someone reminded me I didn't belong. She turned to Jacob, eyes glassy but angry. And then you came. Gave me soup, a name, a room. And still, I don't understand why. Jacob exhaled, leaned back and rolled up his left sleeve. A long scar ran across his forearm. Pale, jagged, ugly. I got this when I was 12, he said. A Terran soldier thought I was stealing rations. I wasn't, but I was poor. Dirty. Worth less in his eyes. Bryn stared. I've got more, he said, tapping his ribs. Broke 2 during a raid. My home burned while I hid in a trash chute. He looked at her, eyes steady. You don't need to shine for me to understand your pain. Bryn felt her throat tighten. No one had ever done this, matched her pain with their own. Most tried to hide their scars or used hers against her, but Jacob showed his like badges. She stood up slowly, walked over and sat beside him on the floor. Her shoulder brushed his arm, and for the first time she didn't pull away from a touch. You think broken people can heal? She asked. Jacob looked at her. I don't think I know. Bryn looked down at her hands again. For so long they had only known work, bruises, and cold. But now, they were warming near someone who didn't flinch at her flaws. I want to help, she said softly. Jacob raised an eyebrow. With what? Fixing things, like you do. He chuckled. You know machines? No, she said. But I want to learn. He smiled. Then I'll teach you. That night they stayed up late. Jacob showed her how to hold a plasma driver. She dropped it twice. He didn't scold her, just laughed and handed it back. For every mistake, he gave her a reason to try again. And before they both fell asleep, she whispered something into the quiet. Thank you for not looking away. Jacob didn't reply with words. He just placed a folded cloth on her side of the bed, fresh and warm, like someone preparing a space not just for a guest, but for a friend. And in that moment, Bryn didn't feel useless. She felt seen. It had been 10 days since Bryn came to live in Jacob's workshop. Every morning she woke up early, swept the floors, cleaned the tools, and made sure the generator was working. Every night Jacob taught her how to fix broken tech, wires, coolant tubes, power cores. She was learning fast, but more than that, she was changing. Her eyes, once empty, now held light. Her voice grew stronger. She even laughed once when Jacob spilled engine oil on his face. And still, she often asked, "Why are you this kind to me?" Jacob would only smile and say, "Because you deserve it." One evening, as the orange sun dipped behind the factories, Jacob and Bryn sat outside the workshop, sharing stale biscuits and warm synth milk. The air was calm, peaceful, until it wasn't. A loud crash came from the alley. 3 alien thugs stepped into the open, big, sharp-toothed, and wearing torn leather. One of them pointed at Jacob. "Human trash. You don't belong in this sector." Jacob stood slowly. "I'm just a mechanic." The tallest alien laughed. "And now you're keeping that with you?" He pointed at Bryn. "A dim light girl who should have died on the street?" Bryn froze. Her heart pounded. Her old fear returned. These were the kind of people who used to throw stones at her. The alien moved closer. "Give her to us. Let us finish what her people were too weak to do." Jacob stepped in front of her. "She's with me." The alien shoved Jacob hard. He stumbled back and hit the wall. Bryn's hands clenched. Her breath quickened. She remembered. Being hit, being kicked, being called worthless. Not again. This time, someone had stood up for her. Now it was her turn. Without thinking, Bryn stepped forward. "Leave him alone," she said. The thugs laughed. "What will you do, dim light?" Bryn's eyes narrowed. "I will make you regret touching him." The first alien lunged at her, but she didn't run. Instead, she grabbed a metal pipe from the ground and swung hard. Crack! It hit his leg. He screamed. The second one came fast, but she ducked and kicked his knee. Years of carrying heavy loads had made her legs strong. Jacob stared, shocked. This wasn't the quiet, scared girl he had taken in. This was someone fierce, someone who had hidden fire in her chest. The last alien grabbed her arm, twisting it. She cried out but didn't fall. Instead, she used her elbow to strike his jaw. He dropped her. Jacob rushed forward and tackled him. Together they stood side by side, wounded, breathing hard but not backing down. The thugs, embarrassed and bleeding, growled and ran off into the shadows. Silence returned. Bryn dropped the pipe. Her hands were shaking. Jacob stepped closer. "Are you okay?" She looked up at him. There was blood on her lip, a bruise forming on her cheek. But her smile, it was full of pride. "I didn't let them hurt you," she said, almost in disbelief. Jacob nodded. "No, you protected me." She looked down at her bruised hands. "I've never protected anyone before." "You did great," he said. They sat on the ground, side by side. Bryn winced. "I think I broke my toe." Jacob laughed, gently taking her foot and removing the boot. "Yep, swollen, but you'll live." Bryn sighed. "I was so scared." "You still fought." Bryn looked at him. "Would you have fought for me?" Jacob didn't answer right away. He looked into her eyes. "I already did. The moment I chose not to walk past you." She blinked fast, holding back tears. Then something changed in her heart. She wasn't just someone who had been saved. She was someone who could fight back. For what mattered, and tonight, what mattered, was him. The next morning, the whole sector was whispering. A dim-light girl fought back. She defended a human. She hurt 3 thugs and didn't even glow. Bryn sat quietly on the workbench, while Jacob wrapped her bruised arm. Her toe was still swollen and her lip had a cut, but she didn't flinch. Jacob looked at her with care. "They'll talk, but don't let it break you." Bryn gave a small smile. "Let them talk. I'm done hiding." But not all talk stayed small. By noon, 2 officers from the city's peace guard knocked on the workshop door. They wore silver armor and sharp helmets. One held a glowing scroll. "You are summoned by the city council. Both of you." Bryn's heart dropped. She felt cold again. The last time the council had looked at her, they told her she didn't belong. Jacob stepped forward. For what reason? The officer didn't answer. "You will come now." The council hall was tall and glowing. Pure white walls, soft music, and floating lights. Bryn walked slowly beside Jacob, her steps uncertain. Eyes stared at her, some with pity, some with disgust. Inside, 12 council members sat high on seats of crystal. Their skin glowed like the stars. Their eyes were cold. The lead speaker, an old male with a voice like polished metal, leaned forward. "Bryn of Villari," he said. You are accused of violence in Sector 6. She was defending me, Jacob said firmly. I was attacked. She stopped them. Another council member hissed. That girl was discarded. She was never part of the Valari. Jacob took a step forward. Maybe your people threw her away, but I didn't. Whispers filled the hall. Bryn kept her eyes on the floor. She felt her hands tremble. The lead speaker said, You, Jacob of Earth, have been warned before about harboring outcasts. Jacob raised his voice, not angry but strong. I fixed broken machines. Now I fix broken hearts. You call her a mistake. I call her the best thing I've found here. Bryn slowly raised her head. The room went silent. She stepped forward. Her voice was soft but clear. You all called me worthless, dim, dirty. I believed you for years. Gasps. But now, she said, someone gave me food without asking for anything. Gave me a name, a place, a reason to wake up. She turned to face them fully. I'm not glowing, but I'm not afraid. Because someone finally saw me not as a problem, but as a person. The lead speaker was quiet. Then he said, well, what do you want, girl? Bryn looked at Jacob. He gave her a small nod. She faced the council again. I want nothing from you. I don't need your approval. I only came because you called me, but after that, I'm going back to the one place where I feel alive. She took Jacob's hand. Whispers turned into stares. Some council members looked surprised. One looked ashamed. Another even turned away. And then, the unthinkable happened. A young female council member, glowing faintly blue, stood up. She placed her hand over her chest. I vote that this girl be left in peace. She has shown more heart than many of us here. The lead speaker scowled, but could not argue. She broke no law. The woman continued. She protected a citizen. She has done nothing wrong. Jacob smiled. Then we'll be going. As they walked out of the chamber, Bryn breathed in deep. Her legs were still weak, but her spirit stood tall. She had faced her past, looked it in the eye, and walked right through it. Outside the council building, children were playing near the street. One little alien girl looked at Bryn and whispered to her brother. She's the one who stood up to the bad guys. Bryn paused. She looked at the girl and smiled. A real, full smile. The girl waved, for the first time in her life. Someone looked at her with admiration. Bryn didn't need to glow. She was already shining. The workshop felt different now. Since the council meeting, people looked at Bryn with new eyes. Some curious, some confused. A few even nodded when they passed her. No one threw stones. No one called her names. But Bryn didn't trust it yet. Kindness was still a strange feeling, like walking barefoot on soft ground after years of cold stone. Jacob didn't change. He still offered her tea every evening. Still let her mess up his tools while she practiced. Still watched her with a quiet smile when she laughed for no reason. But something inside Bryn had changed. She no longer flinched at her reflection. She no longer feared the light. And when she spoke, her voice didn't shake. One evening, as they sat outside watching the twin moons rise, Bryn broke the silence. I've been thinking, she said. Jacob sipped his tea. About what? About where I go from here. Jacob turned to her a little tense. You mean leaving? Bryn shook her head. No, I mean what I am, who I want to be, and with who. He exhaled, shoulders relaxing. You've come far, Bryn. She nodded. And it's because of you. Jacob looked away. You did it yourself, I just... No, she interrupted softly. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. The wind grew gentle, brushing past them. Like a whisper, she looked him in the eyes, her voice steady. Jacob, would you take me with you? His brows pulled together. Where? Wherever you go. Whatever life you choose next. Let me be a part of it. Jacob stared at her, stunned. Bryn continued. I'm not asking. for safety or shelter. I'm asking for something harder. He swallowed. What's that? She smiled, nervous but brave. A place at your side. As your partner. As your wife. Jacob blinked. Bryn quickly added, not out of pity. Not because I need saving, but because I love you. The words hung in the air like a lightning storm ready to strike. Jacob said nothing for a long moment. Then he laughed, soft and warm, and stood up. Wait here. Bryn watched him disappear into the workshop. Did she say too much? Did she ruin everything? But then, he returned. He held something in his hand. A small, handmade ring. It looked like it was crafted from scrap metal but carefully polished. I made this last week, he said. Didn't know if I'd ever have the courage to give it to you. Bryn's breath caught. He knelt on one knee. I'm not perfect. I fix broken junk and live in a workshop. But if you'll have me, Bryn, I'll spend my life showing you what love really means. Her eyes watered. She held out her hand, and he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. She laughed through her tears. It's ugly, Jacob grinned. So are we. But we make it work. They hugged under the moonlight. For the first time, Bryn didn't feel like someone who had been rescued. She felt chosen. But word traveled fast. By morning, the news had reached the upper towers. The dim girl marries. A human, people sneered. Some laughed, but others listened. Some young aliens whispered, she was nothing once, now she's loved. Some mothers looked at their daughters and said, maybe light isn't everything. And in the city center, an old noble watched the screen, her eyes full of regret. It was Bryn's mother. She touched the image of her daughter and whispered, you became more than they ever saw. And in a small, dusty workshop, two souls, once broken, now stood whole, together. 5 years later, the city had changed. The towers still stood tall. The glowing streets still buzzed with hover carts. But something deeper had shifted, quietly like roots growing under the surface. On the corner of Sector 6, where metal and dust once ruled, there now stood a place called the Ember House. A warm, 2-level workshop with gardens on the roof, laughter in the air, and a small sign that read, Broken Things Welcome. Inside, children sat in a circle around a glowing table. Some were human, some were alien. Some were dim lights like Bryn once was. Kids with faded eyes, slow voices, scars on their hands. And in front of them stood her, Bryn. Her white hair was longer now, braided with copper wire. Her skin still did not glow like the other Valari, but her smile, it could light the whole room. She wore simple clothes, no crown, no robes. Just a vest with tools in the pocket and grease on her fingers. And yet the children looked at her like she was a queen. Remember, she said, pointing to a small broken bot on the table. Nothing is useless. Some things just need the right kind of hands. The kids nodded, working on their machines, focused and hopeful. At the back of the room, Jacob leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching her with pride. She's better at this than I ever was, he whispered to a visitor. Beside him, the visitor, a young Valari noble, smiled. They told us she was cursed, useless, but now my own daughter only listens to her. Jacob chuckled. She was never the broken one, just misunderstood. Outside the Ember House, the city now had dim light safe zones, mixed education, council members from all classes. The change hadn't come from war or violence. It started with one girl, who was thrown away and refused to stay down. Later that evening, Bryn and Jacob sat on their rooftop garden. The sky was orange. A soft wind moved through the solar leaves. Bryn sipped her tea. I heard my name mentioned at the council today, she said. Jacob raised an eyebrow. Good or bad? She smiled. Both. Still confuses them, I think. That someone like me didn't fade. Jacob nodded. You didn't just survive, Bryn. You built something. She looked at him. I was nothing once. He leaned forward. brushing a silver strand from her cheek. You were never nothing. The world just needed time to catch up to you. Bryn looked out across the city. Once, those towers reminded her of pain. Now, they reminded her of how far she had come. The next morning, a young girl stood outside the Ember House. She was shivering, her small hands dirty, her face downcast. Bryn opened the door and saw her. The girl looked up. They said you help people, like me. Bryn crouched, her voice gentle. What's your name? I don't have one, the girl whispered. Bryn smiled. Then let's find you one. She held out her hand. You're safe here. You matter here. The girl took her hand, just like Bryn once took Jacob's, and a new story began. From useless to unforgettable, Bryn was not just a survivor now. She was a builder, a teacher, a mother to those the world ignored. She was the woman who was once nothing, but became everything.